it would, in every practical respect, amount to a complete tearing down and demolition of the existing Constitution of the United States of America. I mean, that's what it amounts to. If their plan and proposals were carried forward and put into effect, the Constitution and the United States would no longer exist as a republic of the nature that we have enjoyed to the extent we have enjoyed it to this point in time.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. You will not believe what the deep state swampers at Harvard Law are proposing. It's absolute treason. Before we begin this interview with author and political pundit Wayne Jett, just a quick word about Virtual Shield. Are you using a VPN to watch this video? Well, if you're not, you should. Keep in mind that Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates are some of the creepiest dudes on the planet, and many of you are willingly letting them know everything about you on a daily basis. And the only real protection against these digital tyrants is the use of a VPN. A VPN is a virtual private network. It's a server where you log on before you browse the internet, and it basically masks or hides your identity. Sign up for a free 30-day trial of Virtual Shield VPN mobile and desktop app, and it will shield your browsing activity from the prying eyes of Big Brother, whether on a public Wi-Fi connection, in a foreign country, or at home. Here, let me show you how easy it is. You just go to virtualshield.com or the Google Play Store and download the Virtual Shield free 30-day trial, install it, and click Connect. Now that I'm connected, my IP address is one coming out of Chicago, and I don't live anywhere near Chicago, Illinois. In honor of the unexpected passing of one of the NBA's all-time greats, this month, Virtual Shield is offering 24% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons. So sign up for a free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield VPN and see what the hype's about. You have nothing to lose and your privacy to keep. I'll leave the link below this video. And let's begin. Friends, thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back. It's great to have you. Hey, I've got back on the line today my friend Wayne Jett. He's the proprietor of classicalcapital.com and the author of Fruits of Graft. And we're having trouble today with Zoom. Can't get video to cooperate, so this one will be an audio-only interview, but I'm really pleased to have Wayne back on. How are you, Wayne?
I'm fine, Sean, and nice to talk with you.
Well, it's nice to have you back, my friend. So we're going to talk a little bit about the economy, and then we're going to talk about something very interesting, the Harvard law plots, which I think people are going to find pretty darn interesting. The heart of the deep state, I've been told by Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, is that couple square miles there between Harvard and MIT. So we're going to get to the Harvard law plots in a moment. But first, Wayne, your thoughts about the economy in the coronavirus. We're seeing this thing spread. The Dow has dumped 2,000 points from highs. It's hard to see how this thing is going to be stopped, and it's even harder to see how the economy doesn't take a real hit. Your thoughts, Wayne?
Well, I think undoubtedly the economy of China is taking a very big hit. I think it's likely to be substantially less here, but there would be impacts, no doubt, if China is actually shut down for a substantial period of time. These previous years we've had of taking so much in the way of production from China to go into our chain production processes here. There are going to be production processes in the United States that obviously can't function, the supply line and so forth. Those things are foreseeable under just about any circumstance now, but we'll see how this goes in terms of a solution to it. I don't know for certain. I'm not a medical expert, obviously, but it seems to me to be unclear as to whether it is, in fact, a virus or something else. And we'll see whether there is a solution to it. It appears that China, of all places, is the one most dramatically injured by this. And so it seems to me very unlikely that the Chinese would have done this to themselves or to their own people. Certainly not to their own economy, it seems to me. And so in those circumstances, is this another operation from the deep state? I think almost certainly so, but that's just my opinion. I don't have inside information or anything of the sort.
Well, I've got a piece of information I'd like to share. Then I'll send you the link to this video, Wayne. This is mirrored over at the Crow House. I put this video up at thephaser.com and SGT Report. It's titled Q is for the Queen's Kinetic, one of the most important interviews you will ever hear. It's featuring Douglas Gabriel speaking with Michael McKibben, and they talk about the roots of this coronavirus, the patents on it leading back to the British Crown, and it talks about the House of Rothschild. It talks about, Kinetic, this corporation. It's really the heart of the heart of the heart of the shadow government, the world government, the deep state, if you're to believe what this interview is talking about, and I tend to believe it. It's just real frightening because, Wayne, as you know, back in October of 2019, Event 201 was held by the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, World Economic Forum, and Johns Hopkins, and they did an exercise mirroring exactly what we're seeing today with a coronavirus pandemic. So it just all adds up to, I think, a thinking person coming to the conclusion that this is all being done by design.
Well, I think the sum of substance of it right now, in terms of our financial circumstances in the United States, amounts to another reason why the Fed is not going to tighten. In fact, will probably loosen if that's possible, to whatever extent and in whatever ways they can find in order to so-called ease monetary policy and make it easier for the financing arrangements to be made in the United States. So we'll see what kind of a hit, if any, the United States economy takes. It certainly, I think, is a negative event, no doubt about it, certainly for other places in the world, but we will see how it goes. I think it's very likely in the category of probably a threat that the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, the globalist cabal made, and their threat wasn't responded to in the way they wished, and so they went ahead with it. We'll see how successful they are from their point of view in making it happen around the world. But obviously it is a anti-human event, and we'll see what comes of it.
In your view, how in the world, and I don't really care about Walmart or the crap they sell for the most part, but how in the world are Walmart and Target going to stock their shelves if the factories in China remain closed?
Well, a good question. There are so many aspects of this deep trade that we've been doing with China, depending upon it and almost entirely for what is in the nature of consumer goods or consumer products, including food in the United States. And thank goodness we have already moved away from that to some extent. We'll see how it goes from this point, but this is what makes each nation susceptible to the threats and the weapons that the deep state, the globalists, have provided for themselves, have acquired, and they certainly are ruthless in deploying those weapons. I think that it could be bad, but I don't see any reason at this point to assume that it's going to be absolutely awful so far as the U.S. is concerned. It certainly appears to have very frightening and inhuman results in China so far.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to see as things develop where it goes from here.
Yeah. All right. Well, the reason I really wanted to have you on today is to talk about your article from January 22nd titled Harvard Law Plots, Constitutional Ingenuity or Subversion. And the reason for that is that I think it's very serendipitous that I just had on Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, and he said this. Listen to this, Wayne.
We have fake science, fake problems pushed out to the fake media. And that's why I think my running for Senate is going to be, and winning is important because it's going to be historic, because Massachusetts, the 1 mile radius between MIT and Harvard, is the center of the deep state. Every evil starts in the 1 mile radius between MIT and Harvard. And I know these guys, I've figured them out.
Wayne, could you hear that okay?
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you very much.
absolutely. And I want to let people know that now suddenly your video is working. So Zoom's been giving us issues today, guys. I don't know why, but I'm real glad that Wayne's video is working. All right, Wayne, your article here, Harvard Law Plots, Constitutional Ingenuity or Subversion. Talk to us about that, because I just think it's real interesting that Dr. Shiva just said that on my show recently.
Well, thank you. I was practically shocked, and it's hard to do that these days. But on January 10th, Harvard Law Review's latest edition came out, and it had a law note in it. Now, being from a law school, I can tell you a little background on what a law review is all about. It's not the funny pages. It is serious business. It is the face and the reputation of the law school. Certainly, each law school attempts to use its law review not only to help the profession within its state or its constituency, but also to reward the best students that it has. The people on the editors of the law review are usually the top dozen or so top students in the law school. And so they look to that as a means of increasing their prestige. It's no funny business. They get, it's not just the students doing whatever they wish. They are closely supervised by professors, usually the professors with the expertise in the particular area on which a law note is written. And anyway, let me get to the law note that was published that caught my attention on January 10th. It essentially proposes a means and an approach and a strategy to amend the Constitution in a way that does not comply with Article 5 of the Constitution. Article 5 requires a supermajority of both the House and the Senate, 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate, to ratify any amendment to the Constitution. And Article 5 also requires that in addition to those two approvals of the House and the Senate, that 3/4 of all the states amend the Constitution, ratify the constitutional amendment. So in that circumstance, this law note begins by asserting the premise that all are created equal. I take off not from the Constitution, but from all men are created equal that came from the Declaration of Independence by Jefferson. So on the premise that all are created equal, by the way, it's not clear whether they're talking about all humans or all what, but nevertheless, that's the way they do it. And they say that is absolutely the premise upon which our nation should have been organized. And therefore, the Senate is completely unacceptable as a means of exercising power over legislation and over what the people want to do with their government. On that basis, they then proceed by saying that this is so fundamentally unfair that it shouldn't be out of bounds to be more or less unfair in the way it's addressed and removed as a weakness of the Constitution.
Can I jump in though and just say something? I'm reading this here and it is absolutely outrageous. And I just want the audience to understand what the proposal was here. So you write, the Harvard Law Review recently published an unsigned law note proposing a plan to give control of the U.S. Senate and House of Reps to neighborhoods of the District of Columbia divided into 127 new states by an act of Congress without consent or approval of the existing 50 states or a constitutional convention. The Harvard Law Review's law note asserts this should be done to equalize voting power among citizens of different states, when the proposed outcome would create a national political aristocracy centered in the DC swamp. This is absolutely unbelievable. They want to take away each of the states' existing 2 senators, and this is their proposal. This is absolute lunacy, Wayne.
Well, that lays the groundwork for their further activities. to be taken as soon as what they say could be done. They say that we can do this with uh, a simple majority in the House and in the Senate in order to admit these 127 states. They say nothing whatsoever about, for example, signature or veto of the president in that circumstance. They just leave that topic unaddressed. Therefore, that doesn't require them to say we have to win the presidency as well. But you can see when they are proposing to do this radical change, it then provides, as soon as they do this, and presumably they would have these new representatives, the 127 new states, I assume immediately available. What they would then do is promptly adopt new amendments to the Constitution, including removing the Electoral College. They specifically say that. And additional changes as well. The first one being that they would transfer all powers of the existing Senate to another body. They did not describe how that body would be comprised, but obviously it would be one that would satisfy the new powerful senators and representatives from the District of Columbia.
Oh my God. This is just insanity. This really floors me because, look, over at Yale, we have Skull and Bones, which gives us people like George Bush Jr. and John Kerry both running for president at the same time, both bonesmen. This deep state stuff just absolutely ticks us all off because we know what's going on. We're all awake. And you know what happens when people wake up? The elite changed the rules of the game in the middle of the game, Wayne. That's exactly what they've done with free speech on YouTube. Change the rules in the middle of the game to silence the people that are winning the war for truth, right? They want to silence us and shut us up because we're winning. And then when the people rise up and start to take their power back through a lawfully elected president who's not beholden necessarily to the deep state like the Wicked Witch, they just want to change the rules. It's just disgusting. These people are just absolutely disgusting. And you rightly conclude at the end of your article here, the proposal is entirely outrageous. And a person seeking to advance this plan may well be advised to consider whether doing so is an act of treason to subvert the Constitution, which it absolutely is.
And on that last point, it seems to me that it helps to provide an answer to exactly why they would put it in the Harvard Law Review. What if they didn't put it in the Harvard Law Review and they just wrote this up, or whoever conceived of it wrote it up and circulated it around secretly? Would that not be evidence of treason and subversion of the Constitution? It seems to me that perhaps the reason they put it in this so-called highly regarded publication is to make it appear that surely this is simply free and open discourse among intellectuals of the United States, and therefore completely fair and above board. I don't regard the substance of their proposals as anything in the nature of being fair and above board, because it would, in every practical respect, amount to a complete tearing down and demolition of the existing Constitution of the United States of America. I mean, that's what it amounts to if their plan and proposals were carried forward and put into effect. The Constitution and the United States would no longer exist as a republic of the nature that we have enjoyed to the extent we have enjoyed it to this point in time. But they certainly seem to be in a position that they're desperate to do something drastic in order to hold on to power while they've still got it.
All right. Here's the other article we should talk about briefly. It's your latest one. January 30th, the grafting triangle, money pot, grafter, and bagman. Now, the reason we need to talk about this is because one of the men running for president, Joe Biden, is beholden to these same interests. The Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, George H.W. Bush, CIA, deep state, right? These are the people that would love to roll out what Harvard is proposing. President Donald Trump gently expressed to the new president of Ukraine an interest in learning the propriety of a business relationship between Burisma Holdings, the largest energy company in Ukraine, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter, you write. This so much incensed the House Democrat majority, they have impeached the U.S. president and urged the Senate to remove him from office, barring him from running for a second term. And you go on to talk about simple bunco analysis. Do you want to talk a little bit about this? Because again, the American people have woken up. We know that Joe Biden is a criminal. His son is a criminal. And the Democrats are criminal for focusing on our president as opposed to the criminal Biden family.
Well, I'll be happy to talk about it. The situation is a simple one. And I think, although I'm not a police expert, it's reasonably clear to me that what we have here is a straightforward case of graft of the kind that was discussed in The Fruits of Graft. And we have it at a very high level of government. Nobody would have called Joe Biden the most powerful man in the United States at any time. But he was the vice president for 8 years. And in that circumstance, apparently, by all indications that I can see, had the opportunity to engage in the exercise of power. And one way that was done under that administration was to designate particular countries as falling within the purview of particular officials of the administration. And Joe happened to be the lucky guy who got designated as being the point man, so-called, for Ukraine. That puts him in a position of reviewing whatever relations we have with them and exercising power and authority in certainly the disposition of money and aid and so forth and so on. So he's in a power position. But let's just focus a minute on that, the triangle of graft that I was mentioning there. That is, in a simple bunco or graft situation, there are three parties. One is a person with a lot of money, the money pot, who has a problem with government that he needs to overcome. The second person, and certainly as far as the money pot's concerned, the most vital person is a person in government with power to do something to help. And the third person is the bagman who conveys or transports the payoff from the money pot to the guy in power. The bagman is necessary in order to conceal the transfer of wealth, the payoff, so that the person in the public position, public power position, is not tainted with the appearance of having actually gone and picked up the money himself or caught in the act or something of the sort. So while the press has been completely unwilling, at least unsuccessful, to put the son of the vice president into the proper role, he was not the actual guy getting paid in terms of exercising power to help that oligarch who owned Burisma. He would have been simply the one doing the dirty work of transporting the funds. The man in position of power is the point man for the U.S. government in dealing with Ukraine. And what would that power have been used to do? It would have been to solve the problem of the oligarch with the money behind Burisma. What was his problem? His problem was reputedly that he had engaged in a great deal of graft stealing of funds in the Ukraine, other kinds of things. And his problem, and specifically, was that there was a prosecutor closing in on him. So this video that we've all seen of Vice President Joe Biden
at the CFR,
to the CFR,
yeah,
how he had gotten rid of that prosecutor. It was not to protect his son. It was to protect the oligarch. He did so, and I guess earned the payments. It turns out to be several $1 million. Now, of course, I've not reviewed the bank accounts and the money and so forth. In fact, Hunter Biden, so far as I have been able to tell, I don't think he's still provided any of his personal financial records to the paternity court in Arkansas, in which he's being sued for child support. And I would suspect if he produced those records, they might show where that money went, which might have wound up somehow in Joe's bank accounts. Although it's family, so what's the difference? But nevertheless, that's the triangle, and the press should have been focusing all this time on the power exercised by the Vice President of the United States, and not just the Vice President, but certainly in many other cases, so much in the way of graft by high officials of the United States government. I certainly wouldn't contend that they're all from one party. I think there's indications of plenty of graft from the Republican side at various times, although I would say this last administration prior to Trump has probably taken the prize for all of that, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, Hillary Clinton and Barry Soetoro and John McCain, let's throw him in there because they're all cut from the same cloth. But to your point, the mainstream Mockingbird media, instead of doing its job exposing the graft, ran cover for the Bidens and continues to run cover for the Bidens. And you write at the end of your article here, if the newly elected president, President Donald Trump, if a newly elected president of a different political party cannot inquire into, indeed investigate and prosecute, potential corruption by high government officials in a previous administration, what chance does America have to clean up, punish, and eliminate corruption that's so detrimental to social justice? And I think this is a great way to round out our conversation as we look at the investigations being done by William Barr and just the future here before we hit November. I know you're holding out hope that we're going to see justice and real prosecutions, real indictments of deep state criminals. I know you hope that. I hope that. What are the odds? Give me the odds on seeing the arrests of any of these high-level individuals that have been involved in the coup against the sitting president.
I think the odds are quite good. I would say we're talking 7 out of 10 anyway. I think there are going to be some important ones, and they're going to be numerous. So by no means do I feel that the president is on the losing end of this situation. I think he's on the winning end of it. And yes, there's certainly a lot of struggling going on. And sometimes the weapons used are in the nature of handguns. I saw an assassination of a person who had been involved or ordered to destroy many records relating to Homeland Security. And just in the last few days. So yes, there's still a difficult road to travel in doing this.
Can I just say something? I think you're referring to federal whistleblower and longtime DHS official Phil Haney. Is that who you're referring to?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and they're saying he suicided himself, right? They're saying this guy who had no reason to kill himself and was an honorable guy blowing the whistle on corruption at DHS, he just mysteriously shows up dead side of the road with a gun, and of course it gets labeled a suicide, because when you get suicided, that's what they do. They call it a suicide.
I've seen some indication that perhaps that treatment of the death has already been reversed. But we'll see. I don't expect that's going to stand in terms of that approach to it. And of course, it shouldn't. There's a good deal of evidence out about the facts that that gentleman has revealed and had revealed before his death. So I expect there's going to be a lot of crime to punish. I'm sure you and your audience are aware of that, and I hope that one will not be one that is forgotten. So we'll see how it goes from here. But there are plenty of other people facing the same kind of thing. I saw another report just last evening about another servant of and true servant of the United States government that has been put in the circumstances of practically having his life taken apart, reputation injured badly.
Who's that, Wayne?
Because he was a whistleblower. I can't tell you his name, but the information is just available to me for the first time. He was aware of improper activities going on. My understanding is as a contractor within the FBI, mm-hmm. and became a whistleblower, announced himself as such and so forth, and yet basically had his normal family existence pretty well torn apart by investigations of his improper handling of government records and so forth.
Well, I hope we can get you back on and you can reveal more about who that is. But what I will say about these suicidings is that if you recall the Wiener laptop in the New York police saying that some of them saw what was on that laptop, and it made it hard for some of those guys to sleep at night. I believe that the number now is that 9 out of the 12 police officials in New York who were privy to what was on that laptop are now dead, suicided, so many of them. And it just begs the question. Well, it doesn't beg the question. We know what the answer is. It's the deep state takes out threats. Anybody who is a real threat to the deep state runs the risk of being taken out or suicided. And
the problem, it seems to me, is to be overcome is just how deeply they have burrowed themselves into the bureaucracy of the swamp, and removing the people from positions of authority who remain in authority now. It's a bureaucracy that is very difficult to deal with, but still there are reports of considerable progress, and I expect we're going to see them this year. I don't think we're going to have to wait until after another election, and obviously all of us are hoping for sooner the better, and the more the better. So let's see how it goes. I'm still hopeful and optimistic that this will come about.
All right. Amen. All right. Well, we'll keep our eye on all of these stories, including the run for the White House in November. The best they have to offer, evidently, according to those who want to vote on the Democratic side, is Bernie Sanders, a Marxist. I mean, my God, these people want to destroy this country. Guys, if you want to learn more about Wayne Jett and read his articles, head over to classicalcapital.com. And if you want to support Wayne, you can buy his book, The Fruits of Graft. It's a fantastic book. Head over to Classical Capital and support Wayne. Wayne, appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping on short notice. And we'll get you back on again in the near future to break down what you see happening in November, which I think is another victory for the sitting president.
I look forward to it, Sean. Thanks very much for having me.
All right. Thank you. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. A shout out to our patrons for keeping us in this fight for truth and real news. And to that end, guys, if you want real news 24/7, please visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.
the 1 mile radius between MIT and Harvard is the center of the deep state. Every evil starts in the 1 mile radius between MIT and Harvard. And I know these guys, I've figured them out.